rolling. I was going to say we've got a great program all weekend. This afternoon we run to about 4 p.m. and then tomorrow we're running from 10 a.m. until 4 as well, when there's the combi convoy happens. So I hope you can come tomorrow. And then on Sunday, once again up until 2 p.m, the parade, we've got more amazing talks. To kick it all off today, very, very excited that our lovely friends from Canada have come to share with us. And Sita and May have already been before to MardiGrass. Sita, you first came, maybe was it 10 years ago, or?
I think it was in 2009.
Okay, so Sita first came 10 years ago and then joined us in 2017. And then May is actually an honorary Nimbin person. I think, I don't know, you just keep coming. Yeah, Nimbin's a special place in the world, and it's really great to have connections with other really, really happening cannabis cultures around the world. Not to mention, I think British Columbia, Vancouver is a pretty amazing place. Though Patrick, who's also from Canada, you're actually not, it's not Vancouver, it is British Columbia though.
Yeah, I'm in the mountains of British Columbia.
And the famous BC bud. Yeah. So yeah, basically while here in Nimbin we're getting kind of hard-edged by the police, and law enforcement is still a big problem for us. You might have heard that in Canada on October the 17th, 2018, they pronounced that cannabis was legal for those who enjoy it. Yes.
Yeah.
Now, on the surface, that does sound like a wonderful achievement, and definitely it is. However, there are a lot of nuances and problems with legalisation. It's not just as simple as something being legal, it's really how the legalisation rolls out. And as we're seeing it happen in different jurisdictions in North America, different states in the US, it is interesting to see how those different places approach it and how much emphasis they do place on the existing cannabis community. Yeah, it's all not really running that way necessarily. So I'll hand it over to our lovely guests and we'll hear straight from the horse's mouth how things have been going since last year. All of these lovely people, by the way, have been involved for many years in cannabis businesses in Canada. Okay, who would like to start? May, would you like to?
Should we let you introduce yourself first, Patrick, and then
okay.
we'll do the introductions, and I'll start off?
That's a great idea. Okay, thank you.
First. Hello. Good day, eh? That's how we say it. My name is Patrick, but most people call me Redbeard. It's turning grey, but I still Redbeard for a while yet. I blow glass as my trade. I make bongs. I've been making bongs for 20 years, but I also grow grass. I'm a medical cannabis patient, and I've been growing my own for a long time. So I kind of have my foot in both worlds a little bit. I've been an activist for a while as well, just kind of pursuing better cannabis laws in Canada. Yeah, that's my introduction, and we'll start with there.
I'm Sita von Windheim, and I'm a patient advocate. My main job is that I reformulate patients' medicine in Canada. I reformulate into a way that they can use it better. I make drops, I make suppositories. 2 years ago I did a demonstration on how to actually make suppositories. I boil the roots and I make extracts of the roots, and I just explore the plant as much as I can to help patients heal from whatever ailment they're presenting.
And you're an original MMAR patient, correct?
Yes, so I'm an original MMAR patient. I'm grandfathered into the licenses, and we still grow regularly and fruitfully.
So my name is Asia May Moon, and I'm from Vancouver, British Columbia. I originally got into the marijuana scene in 2005 after having a series of operations on my legs to have my legs point forwards. Opioids weren't really doing it for me anymore and putting me in a position where I was able to work or kind of enjoy my life, so I moved on to cannabis and have kind of explored activism from there. I think my most challenging moment in activism was actually joining the political ring and trying to help with writing policy, which we managed to do some work in 2011 that was successful. However, most of my efforts have been in the dispensary business, where I worked for a recreational dispensary for 10 years, as well as ran my own medicinal dispensary for 5 years, and that was 2011 just to the end of 2016, and that was called Three Happy Cats. And for the last, I guess now it's been, well, that's 4 years. Yeah, I've been doing the 12 High Chicks magazine, and we've been kind of traveling around the world and getting stories, and that's what brought me here. In 2014, my friend Opus 420 and Mark from Vancouver decided we were going to go to the 30th anniversary Skeptics Convention in Sydney, where there was a presentation by a doctor named Dr. Vrolyk, and his presentation was Life After Prohibition. And that was what the story I wanted, was to kind of get his take on what he thought it would be. And it was quite different than what it is for us, that's for sure. And I guess I decided that I would talk about where we've come from and where we're going now with legalization, because I got to see what professionals thought it would be and to see where it's really gone. I think we've got, it's over 50 new laws that we have now for cannabis since it's become legal, which is very frustrating when there was only kind of one law to begin with. You know, it was illegal and that was that. It's right down to where you can store it in your vehicle, when you can and cannot have it, if you're going to operate a vehicle. I believe it was set at $5,000 if you're caught being intoxicated on marijuana in public, which surpasses any fine for any other drug that you could be intoxicated on. I think it's a $180 fine to be intoxicated on alcohol. Yeah, legalization is definitely not what I imagined. It's more illegal now than it ever was, as far as I'm concerned. It definitely affected a lot of jobs. The dispensary I worked at for 10 years, they dismissed everybody just before legalization. We watched huge raids. There was Project Claudia as well as Project Gator. They wiped out like 300 dispensaries in one day in Ontario at one point. It's kind of been a free-for-all and just busting everybody and financially crippling companies so that they can't move forward. Handing out huge fines has been another big one that they're doing as well, especially in the cities that allowed for dispensaries to work on a municipal platform. And now it's not recognized federally, so the feds are coming in and saying, fine them, close them down. And that's essentially what we're seeing, which is kind of like the headline almost every week, like so-and-so's getting busted, somebody else is getting busted, something else is being shut down.
The licensed producers have gone to Ottawa and complained because there are dispensaries that are selling cannabis and they want them all shut down. They're whining, they're actually whining. It's become a joke because they're actually whining about it at this point.
Yeah, and there's also been some other big changes too with the advertisement. They were complaining that those that didn't have licenses were advertising cannabis. Now, if I publish an advertisement on a magazine, before it was, you know, you'd get a nasty letter from Health Canada. Now you're facing, I believe it was $250,000 per advertisement because the licensed producers complained that non-licensed companies were advertising their marijuana products, or in some cases it's not even marijuana, it's tinctures or it's hemp clothing, or it's just not approved by the government.
And the large corporation producers are still advertising because they look at the profit margin of their advertisement, and if they're still going to make more, or if it's worth it, they'll just still do the advertisement and pay the fine. So they're just kind of like, it's a large corporation. So maybe that's where I'd like to start off on too. The way Canada approached legalization was they really gave the large businesses the first crack at the business. It was very difficult for small companies to get into.
They let the police make the laws and the regulations and become the head of the license.
Yeah, and they were advised directly by the lobbyists and the folks that the large licensed producer corporations could afford to do. So really the licensed producers wrote a lot of the policy. So it's kind of been a disadvantage that way for a lot of the small businesses or the mom and pop operations. They were all pushed out, like May said, all of the dispensaries are closing, only the government stores are opening. I think we'll eventually see a change. The craft industry is coming up soon. Health Canada is saying that they're going to push forward some craft producers. So we look forward to that, but in the meantime, we still only, well, there is over 100 licensed producers, so there is a wide variety of selection, but it's all overpriced and mass-produced, and it's really not very good medicine.
And there's not enough stock to supply the country.
True, yeah.
Because when I went to Quebec, and funny enough, we had a mail strike, and you're allowed to gift up to 30 grams of dried marijuana or 7 grams of other hashish or some sort of extract, if I'm not mistaken, something that's not cannabis.
I'm not sure about that number.
It was one of the two.
You can gift 30 grams of
gifted.
cannabis
So I
to
sent
another
myself
adult.
some cannabis in the mail.
Yeah.
We had a big Canada Post strike, so my weed's sitting in the sorting facility and I can't get it. So at this point I get desperate and I drive down to the Quebec dispensary where they inform you at the door before you even get in there that we are low on stock and you are only allowed to purchase 3 items and we do not have any high THC products left. So before you even get in the door, they do not have anything that they say that they have in stock. There's 3 items. There's over 200 shelves with 3 shelves that are stocked.
Leave it to the government to not be able to sell weed. It's really crazy. Like we got, I'll say 16-year-old, but 18-year-old kids that can do very well in the park, but the government can't figure it out.
And very expensive.
And that's kind of the problem. The government didn't really seek the input of the existing industry. We had a perfectly operating dispensary system. Cannabis was quasi-legalized in Vancouver. There was hundreds of dispensaries. They were all policing themselves. They weren't selling to minors. They were being responsible neighbors. And they wiped all of that to the side to put in their own system, which was fairly poorly advised and poorly organized. So post-legalization, we're seeing the government sales are really low. They're not making their money back. I think every company's losing money. 80% of, they have statistics, I don't know where they get from, but they're saying 80% of the cannabis bought is still from the black market, or as I call it, the green market, the local market. But, so they haven't figured it out yet. Hopefully they will eventually. Like I'm an optimist. I hope that legalization will work. It's certainly way the fuck better than the prohibition you guys are suffering under. This is crazy. You got cops outside of town searching for medicine. We had a search and a raid here yesterday. It's 30 years ago from where I'm from. I'm in the 90s visiting here. It is very different from where I'm from. So I really look forward to the work that you guys are all working very hard, and I think you're seeing those results already, but you're going to see more. Keep up the great work, and we're all rooting for you, and we'll, whatever we can do to help across the world. There is models that the Australian government can follow now, so there's that, and I don't know, I guess we'll just do our best. But we look forward to the craft industry catching up here.
There's a few politicians here this weekend, Patrick, who definitely are interested in progressing cannabis reform. So we'll introduce you and you might be able to... I know for sure that one of them has been, she's visited Canada and also Portugal. You know who you're Fiona? Yeah. I was just wondering, I've heard too on the grapevine that not only is there a bit of scarcity of pot in these government stores, but it's really crap.
Yeah,
Yes.
It's pretty bad.
It's terrible.
Some of the licensed producers have a little bit better medicine. It can be really expensive for those. Like some of the licensed producers don't irradiate. Some of them hand trim, hand water. They do kind of have a craft mindset, but they have a million square footage to look after. So, but it isn't as good as what a lot of people can grow in their basements. Truly, yeah.
It's also very expensive with all the compliance that these big, huge conglomerates have to go through with all their staff and all the people that have to be certified to even go in there and all their lockups, and it makes each gram very expensive. When you can grow outdoors, you can grow for pennies a gram. And in other countries, certainly, I know of contracts being written for $60 a kilo to be converted to oil to be shipped to Canada eventually. And those regulations are already in place. So I don't see that these licensed producers that are growing inside are going to last very long, because it's just not, it's financially not feasible. It's environmentally a disaster with all the light and electricity they're using to run these places. So
They've also sent bugs to us in the licensed producers packaging. I've received moldy items. And then I received an item where I'm not sure if they removed all the seeds from it, but the buds were pitted. And like I said, it looked like someone had kind of manually gone in and pulled out all the seeds. And when I broke up the wheat, I did manage to get 10 seeds out of 3.5 grams. And it was 0.5 grams in seeds is what the final packaging was. Yeah, it's quite interesting. And it's super, super expensive. I mean, on the black market right now, you can get it for $1 a gram. Why would you pay $12 a gram when you can get 1 gram for $1?
Yeah, and also the new system doesn't have any extracts or edibles or there is some topicals, I believe. There's some oils you can buy, but it's super weak.
The regulations for topicals aren't available yet.
Right.
They have flour, and they have drops, and they have capsules.
Yeah, I believe it was Afria put out it was Soleil put out the MTCN oil, or MTC.
Right.
MCT.
I haven't made a purchase yet in the new legal system.
It was a real waste.
I grow my own, and it's much better than they can grow. So I'll just keep smoking my own.
So are you able to legally grow your own?
Yeah, I have for many years, actually, with a doctor's prescription. Yeah, for my arthritis, I can grow my own. Yeah.
Every Canadian citizen that's not in Manitoba or Quebec can grow 4 plants in their home legally. If you have a medical license, then it's up to your doctor, and I have a license for 72 plants on top of those 4 recreational plants.
And so that all continues even with the new...
Yeah, it's a separate system, so that's the Health Canada medical licensing versus the recreational.
May, have you looked into what the regulations are if you want to grow 4 plants at home?
Yeah.
It's pretty much like
pretty
under
fun.
very tight lock and key. No one can see it. It's very,
Yeah.
very
Do you have to
harsh.
make an application to...
No, you
No.
don't have to make an
No.
application, but your plants cannot be visible.
They cannot
in
be
the province
visible
of
to
British
anyone outside
Columbia,
world. Children
if the
cannot have
public can
access.
see your 4 legal plants, it's a crazy fine. It's in the thousands of dollars.
At one
Per
point, they were proposing that you would, even for your 4 plants, that you would have to make an application with your local police
No,
station.
just the owner of the unit has to be aware, and
Yeah.
the person growing it needs to be 19 or older.
Yeah.
That's all.
So I could also relate as a small cannabis business. I'm an artist blowing glass for the last 20 years. And like my colleagues, we did pretty good. We were blowing glass, making pipes and bongs in our basements and selling them to the head shops across Canada. That hasn't changed much. I became one of the very first licensed cannabis accessory vendor. So I had to get a number from the government, and now I can sell to the government stores. I sold 1 set to them, my first legal bong, woo! But they haven't ordered since. So like I said, I've had numerous people try to buy that bong from them, and they said, well, it's the only one we have. They haven't even figured out how to restock shelves to sell merchandise. So don't expect the government to do a good job selling weed or bongs. They don't know what they're doing. So that's kind of the sum of it. They just don't know what they're doing. It's kind of not really surprising how it's rolled out. It's full of errors. It's full of just missing regulations, and far over-regulated on the other side.
And it's done some serious damage to our impaired driving laws as well. At this point now, we used to have to do an impaired test, and then they could test you for, say, being impaired under alcohol or marijuana or something else. Now, they can skip through that, and they can just test you right away. But for you guys, that's always been a law. But we have a Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and that actually violates that charter. And they've pushed it so far that 2 hours after you have parked your vehicle, you are responsible to remain sober so that a test can be performed within that time period. This has never been heard of before, and the very first person to fail that test wasn't even intoxicated, doesn't smoke marijuana at all, and the second person to fail that test takes it medicinally. They're in Nova Scotia, and they are challenging that. So that'll be interesting to see the very first Supreme Court challenge against the impaired driving laws. But it's very invasive. I realize for you guys, you're like, we have this all the time, but it's very new to us, and marijuana has been incredibly criminalized. We never had to have a marijuana test on the side of the road. There was no such thing as going to jail for, if two people are exchanging weed and one of them is not old enough, and I realize that is not something we want to do, but perhaps one is 18 and one is 19. That's a 14-year prison sentence. That's obscene.
Do you know what the fine? There's a fine for giving alcohol, like hard liquor, to a minor. Do you know how much that is?
No, but I know it's dramatically.
$200, I think, yeah.
It's $500.
Yeah.
So if you give hard liquor to a younger person, it's $500.
Or 14 years in prison if you give them marijuana.
If you give them a toke off a joint.
However, rape, murder is less time in prison in Canada of a minor than it is to give them drugs.
So we still have work to do in Canada on our
Yes.
laws.
Yeah.
Do you think that, because I guess it is a bit of a radical step to declare cannabis legal, do you think that your government, the regulators, were really worried that they had to make it look like they weren't making it too good?
Oh, of course.
Yeah,
Yes.
as in
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
pandering to all the doomsayers.
And
Yeah.
their voters, there's a lot of the people that vote in Canada are elderly, maybe and more conservative, and they're not going to vote as hard if you were to legalize it more freely. So yeah, it was legalized with a lot of regulations, I believe, so that they could balance their voters base.
Yeah, and because when I visited Vancouver, one of the fun places to go to was the cannabis cafes. And I do recall that I think a day or two after we were at one of them, they got raided and all the rest of it. So that was all going on then. Anyway, how's all that going? Are they still there in Hastings Street?
The cafes are definitely still there. A couple have closed. The city has vowed to shut them down. I know a few of them,
Most of them are closed.
Yeah, they've been given so many fines that they can't keep up with the fines. It's not that they've gone in and raided them. They've financially crippled them, and that's something a lot of us have actually experienced through multiple court cases. I'm about to actually do my 8th court case in a row. I've won all of them or settled out of court, which means both parties win, which is really nice. But that's 8 in a row. I mean, you get to a point where your life is so consumed by the court cases that they take you out that way. And I'm definitely feeling that more people are in that boat than ever before.
But there's a couple people out there really pushing it. There's
It's true.
a smoking lounge in Toronto that's just been approved. Abby Roach's store there in Toronto, as well as Ted Smith in Victoria. He's done a lot of work in fighting in the courts, and so they are working with the city and the workers' comp bylaws to get the proper ventilation so that they can have an indoor smoking room. But most of the ones in Vancouver have closed.
I believe Weeds is working on a challenge as well.
Yeah.
So there's just a few that are kind of hanging on, and we're just going to hope for the best, I suppose.
Yeah, and because they're also made the bylaws so we're not allowed to smoke cannabis in a lot of places. In Vancouver, you're not allowed to smoke in any park, and in a city park, or near any entrance or window off of the sidewalk, which there is a lot of doors and windows on the sidewalk, so you have to basically stand in the middle of traffic to smoke legally.
I actually did that challenge with
I'm sure
Opus
that's
420 in 2015, and we brought out the measuring tape and some obnoxious megaphones, and we found out that basically everywhere in Vancouver, except for Gastown, you are in the street.
Yeah.
The gas
Any other questions? Does
Yeah, I was
anyone
going to
have any-
say, shall we open it up, and does anyone have any questions to ask these guys? They're going to be around all weekend, and definitely over this weekend we've got the wonderful cafe next door here on the veranda, and a lot of speakers all hang out there, and you can chat with them.
We never
You
turn
gotta-
the cameras round either, so you don't have to worry about being filmed. Ask away questions. There's no video, reverse shots.
Thank you for this. All in all, it's quite disappointing to see the situation. Is there something that made a real positive change with the legalization?
Well, with Oregon, that's the United States, and they're state to state, which is a little bit different. We're a federally approved recreational as well as medicinal, so we don't have to really, I guess we do have the feds coming in to close down the illegal dispensaries, but it's certainly a different platform, that's for sure. They live in a constant uncertainty that the federal police can come in and shut them down at any time. However, their pricing is much different than ours. I've seen, advertisement for $35, $60 for an ounce of weed, which, I mean, I know you get it a heck of a lot cheaper if you go abroad, but for us, we're paying like, $300 for an ounce of, federally approved or state approved pot. So I think
That was a really good question, because I'm an optimist. I'd like to also relate. There's a lot of great things that have happened with legalization.
yeah, that's true.
We're smoking weed like nobody's business in Canada. Now we can gift each other 30 grams of weed. I can just walk up in public, I can carry 30 grams of weed anywhere I want, through airports, on airplanes.
That's
when
true.
we drive, we have to put it in the trunk, just like beer. Not a big deal for me anyway. But yeah, I could just right now in open, on camera, in Canada, give you an ounce of weed.
Put it in the mail.
And then we can just go outside and smoke as much of it as we want. Totally legal, absolutely fine. There's a lot of benefits to it, absolutely. I just want to say that. You guys should keep fighting. It's great. We're gonna make it better. I don't think it's that terrible.
And if you
There's
don't
a
like
lot
the
of
law
things that
exactly-
suck, but it'll get
Wait,
better.
you can change it
We're not
too.
gonna stop fighting either. We've got great activists on it. We're gonna lobby the government so that we can get rid of some of these, really insane regulations. But again, the government had no idea what they're doing. They don't know how to sell weed. And they didn't really ask the people that do. So we'll get it. And I hope you do too.
I'm sorry. I was wondering if now your medical schools are insisting on teaching the endocannabinoid system and our symbiotic relationship with this plant as humans. Is that
Short
happening?
answer?
Yes.
Not really.
Not really.
But they're starting to.
No, I can
Yeah.
I can answer to that. I just read an article last week that said that the Ontario government, every doctor and nurse and health practitioner in Canada is required to take certain amount of courses every year to get educational units. And if you don't make them for so many years in a row, then your license is at risk. So recently, the government of Ontario has instituted that every doctor has to take one of these courses by 2020.
And that
Wow.
was just released. Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
progress. Thank you.
that was just a few days ago. I read that.
I think we have another question here.
We have big corporations growing for providing this cannabis. Has it been talked maybe about having maybe small-scale growers working actually in cooperative and maybe more small-scale growers to actually solve this issue?
Yeah, that's happening now. I think there's a lot of applications going forward for small companies, craft growing. That's the wave we're going to see in Canada next. I've been assured of that.
Well, part of the problem though is that the police made the laws, so they're very concerned about getting the criminal element into this
New system.
So they've made the entrance requirements into their new scheme very difficult. So for most people, if they've ever been involved in the cannabis industry, if they have a past record, they won't ever get a chance to become part of it. I know that there's a group doing craft grow, and they are actively looking for craft growers that will grow in small greenhouses, but the stipulation is you can't be involved in the industry and you can't have a record.
Which is, making everyone that was really hard in the industry not able to get a job or get involved, that's for sure.
Yeah, the lucky ones get through.
Yeah. So, but also the regulations now, you said you had to be out of the industry for 10 years?
Yes, in order to be able to apply. Who was it who had been told?
For dispensary owners?
Yeah, so that you...
For store owner.
For store ownership, yeah. Which
Yeah, there's many different licenses available in Canada. You can get a sales license, a producer license, a production license, which means you can make extracts, a medical sales license, which means you can only sell to medicine. I think that covers all of them. And a nursery license, which means you can grow the small marijuana plants to sell to the other producers.
Yeah.
So it's pretty...
But getting those licenses is the
It's
trick.
very hard, yes.
Yeah, and yeah, it's a very difficult process.
And they're
Millions of
reasonably
dollars.
expensive as well, are they?
Yes.
Yeah,
Probably if you
getting it
wanted,
through, yeah.
if you had a good clean record and you wanted to do a small grow with all the compliances, I think even like if you do a 2,000 square foot one, it costs you over $2 million very easily. By the
Yeah,
time
1 million for sure.
By the time you do all the compliance, and there's a lot of paperwork involved, it's insane.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess that's sort of happening a bit here with the medical as well. It's like you have to be a business person first who
Yep.
knows how to raise all this money and all that sort of smart stuff on the stock market before you even... Yeah, so it's not really leveraging much from the wonderful knowledge and experience and expertise from, I guess, the world of cannabis that's been going on
Yeah.
for so long.
Yeah, that's the shame of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I said, we had a great industry going. We had it figured out. The prices were good. The cannabis was good, and they wiped it all aside to put in the legal system, which is good. But anyway,
Well,
they didn't ask
they're
for much.
they're accountants trying to be gardeners. I
Yes.
mean,
Yeah. The green rush, it's called.
Yeah, that's right. You
Yeah,
have
the
people
gold rush,
sort of
yeah.
announcing that, I couldn't believe that a year ago I'd be involved in the cannabis industry.
Yep, for sure.
And you feel like crying. Anyway, thank you so much, everyone, for coming along to this wonderful talk. Patrick and Sita and May will all be speaking again tomorrow. Patrick's doing an amazing talk on his incredible glass blowing. And Sita's, we got her busy, she's going to be doing a cooking demo, as well as talking about aromatherapy in cannabis. And Asia May is going to talk more about her wonderful and amazing 12 High Chicks magazine. So thank you very much, guys.